recently, in the Idaho State versus Bryan Kohberger case, there's been a lot of talk about the possibility of Bryan Kohberger submitting an alibi, of the state demanding an alibi. As of today, which is June 30th, 2023, no alibi or intent to submit an alibi has been officially filed. So what exactly does that mean? Well, as far as criminal defense goes, there are 17 common defenses to criminal charges in the United States. Of these, and that sounds like, wow, there's 17 possible defenses. Well, as you read through them and keep just about any case in mind, or keep in mind particularly Bryan Kohberger's situation, you easily start to find that not all or most or even a good handful of these 17 possible defenses to criminal charges could apply to Bryan Kohberger. Now, the closest thing we've heard about to an alibi is in the defense's response to the state's alibi demand. I'm just going to read part of it here. Mr. Kohberger notes that Idaho Code 19.5.19.4 preserves his constitutional right to silence as well as to testify on his own behalf. Mr. Kohberger stands firm on his constitutional right as well as the statutory recognition of that right. Noteworthy is that an alibi, quote, indicates a line of proof by which the defendant attempts to show that he could not have committed the crime of which he is accused because he was elsewhere at the time. A defendant's denial of the charges against him does not constitute an alibi, but as soon as he offers evidence that he was at some place other than where the crime of which he is charged was committed, then he is raising the alibi defense. So let's think in terms of those 17 possible defenses to criminal charges. Mr. Kohberger's defense team continues investigating and preparing his case. Evidence corroborating Mr. Kohberger being at a location other than King Road address will be disclosed pursuant to discovery and evidentiary rules as well as statutory requirements. It is anticipated this evidence may be offered by way of cross-examination of witness produced by the state as well as calling expert witnesses. Well, ain't that something? Now, considering that the authorities have tracked what is believed to be Bryan Kohberger's car in approximately 20 different security camera, ring camera, or some kind of camera vantage points as he traveled from Pullman to Moscow and then Moscow back to Pullman, and they can mark the location of this vehicle that they believe to be Bryan Kohberger's, and they believe Bryan Kohberger's in it almost every step of the way. And Kohberger has his phone with him and is traveling with the car when he leaves his apartment in Pullman, Washington at 2:42 a.m. And that phone travels with the car. We can tell this according to the pings and the FBI CAS technology and methodology that was used. And the phone turns off at 2:47 a.m. Now, during the time when Kohberger would be entering into Moscow, committing the crimes, and then returning back to Pullman, Washington, the phone remains off until 4:48 a.m. When Kohberger's phone does turn back on at 4:48 a.m., he is pinging near Blaine, Idaho, which is north of Genesee, which is a little less than half of his route, the convoluted route that he chose to take back to Pullman. And between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., his phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with the phone traveling back towards Pullman, Washington. So, considering that the authorities, according to what they say they have as evidence, have Bryan Kohberger's car, or his alleged car, on about 20 different security camera vantage points from Pullman to Moscow and Moscow to Pullman. And they have that phone traveling with the car for the first 5 minutes of his route from Pullman to Moscow and the last half an hour or so from his route back from Moscow to Pullman. If the defense is saying that Bryan Kohberger's alibi is that he was not at 1122 King Road in Moscow at the time of the crimes, then what could his alibi be? Now again, the biggest hint that we get from Kohberger's defense is that they say it is anticipated this evidence may be offered by way of cross-examination of witnesses produced by the state, as well as calling expert witnesses. Now, please do remember, in all of these documents that are filed either by the defense or the state, these professional practicing attorneys must be making these motions or responses on a good faith basis, which means they can't just bullshit their way through the document. They have to make these statements on a good faith basis based on what they know or believe to be true. So we have to consider that when looking at this equation. So, wow, guys, I have a couple ideas of what I think that could mean and what I think it could not mean. But before I talk about that theory, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and let us all know what you think about Bryan Kohberger's possible alibis at this point in time.